All right, sounds good. Good morning, everyone. I think we've reached that appointed time. I would like to call the Harnett County Board of Commissioners work session for Tuesday, August 10th, 2021 into order. And at this time, Ms. McCoy, would you lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and invocation?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father, let's bow our heads, please. Our Father, we come before you this morning, thanking you for another day. We thank you, God, for this board and those that have given up their time to serve as an assistant to this county. Lord, we thank you for all our agencies in this county and give us the guidance to guide them as well as for our citizens. Forgive us for our sins, Lord. And I ask that you cover us all and give us the ability to make the best decisions for our employees in this county, our agencies of this county, and all of our citizens. This is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. At this time, Mr. Wood, would you like to introduce the Slavin Group? I believe they're here to present to us this morning regarding our selection of a search firm for a permanent county manager.
Yeah, be glad to. Mr. Robert Slavin is here. He also has one of his colleagues, which I'll let him introduce and give her background as well.
Thank you, George. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good morning.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to be here. And I will begin my comments by introducing Barbara Lipscomb, who works for me, and particularly when we're working in North Carolina and Georgia and Southeast. Barbara's been extremely helpful to our organization, and we're very pleased to have her. I do have a PowerPoint. I don't think we're going to need half an hour to describe ourselves, but I do want you to know some things about us. And if you don't mind, I'm going to, I'm not sure I can be understood with that anyway, but it's a lot more comfortable to talk without it. And can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Slavin Management Consultants is a company that I formed in the early 90s, but prior to that I've been involved in local government executive recruiting for a number of years, and prior to that I worked for cities and counties. And I can go into as much of that detail as you want, but I've been in this business probably, well, I know for a fact that of the main competitors we have, I've been in the business as long as any of them. The company, as I said, I formed in the 90s. We do a number of things, primarily executive search for governments, and that practice has taken us to at least 46 of the 50 states and maybe more. And we've placed county and city chief executive officers in at least 300 of those organizations, and a total of over 850 executive placements. Most of the others, other than the chief executives, are county and city department heads, but we have also done quite a bit of work in nonprofits and special authorities. We also have a pay and classification division that's actually headed here in North Carolina. We do performance appraisal for clients and a variety of organizational studies. But we are specialists in local government executive search, headquartered in Norcross, Georgia. That's because, well, I tell you that I moved there with no great affection for Georgia, but I've been there 37 years and I have a great affection for Georgia at the moment. So now, but we went there because of the airport. When I lived in California, I found myself on most weekends traveling to and from clients. From Georgia, I can get to and from the airport there, I can get to and from places without having to stop someplace else. So we're headquartered in Norcross. A project for this search includes not just myself and Barbara, but also a gentleman who's been president of ICMA and also started the County Managers Association division of that. And his name is Dave Krings. Practice is national. Throughout the years that we've been in business, we've established extensive contacts and use those contacts to do outreach search. We spend our process tailored to what you tell us you need, not any pre-established notions that we have when we start these assignments, even when we have the privilege of working for the same place. Again, we don't go in, we go into that subsequent process with no expectations, but rather we need to find out what that organization needs then, and that's the way we would handle this. We would spend time with each of you individually and collectively and with your staff, assuming your permission, and with community leaders if you wanted to find out what this organization is all about, what the culture of it is, and what the culture of the community is, where you are, where you've been, where you are, and where you're going, or where you're been. So, and we spend a lot of time doing that, and we need to make sure that's right. That information goes into what we call a recruitment profile, which we ask you to take a very careful look at, adjust, approve, and once you've approved it, we begin the process of finding people who meet that criteria, not just people who may have succeeded someplace else, or who we might have in our database. 95% of our placements have stayed in their positions for more than 5 years, and actually significantly more than 5 years, and average for a city or county manager is 5 years. So ours, last time I actually did an analysis of it, it's more like 6 or 7 years. Approximately 25% of our placements are minorities or women. You've got a list of those in your proposal. Actually, that number has increased. I will manage this project, and I have, I think I've suggested that I've got the experience necessary to do it. I want Barbara to introduce herself. She's got some real strong ties to North Carolina, and I think it would be worth her mentioning that to you. I do want to talk about Dave Krings for a minute, who I mentioned a moment ago. He's been county manager in Hamilton County, Ohio, Cincinnati, deputy of what we call executive director in Ramsey County, Minnesota, which is assistant county manager, and for a number of years, the county manager in Peoria. He knows counties very well. That's why he's on the team. But Barbara, if you want to talk a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Morning. Glad to be here with you all. I'm Barbara Lipscomb. I am a retired city manager. My last stop was Greenville, North Carolina. I was there for 5 years. I started my career after graduating from the University of North Carolina in the planning school. I was a planner. Then I served in corporate America for about 5 years, came back into local government on the administration side, became an assistant city manager, deputy city manager, primarily in Florida, Lakeland, Florida. I was assistant and deputy. I was city manager interim in Gainesville, Florida, city manager in Castleberry, Florida, and ended my career here in North Carolina. So I'm pleased to be here with you all, and I hope to see more of you.
Barbara and Dave are both have established the credential of credentialed city manager. Is an ICMA credential that they earn, and it's not awarded. They earn it by classwork tests and continuous evaluation, including a 360-degree evaluation of their performance that takes place every 3 or 4 years. Both of them are retired, so that status remains with them, but they are retired. Our affiliates. We're indicated that we're based in Atlanta, but we do have affiliates in different parts of the country: Arizona, California, Kentucky. Here in North Carolina, one of the primarily Compton class, and Ohio, which is where Dave Krings is. These are county clients. I've handed the summary of the presentation to you. I don't expect you. I'm not going to read that list, but I wanted to provide it to you. We've done a lot of work in counties as well as cities, and I have worked myself in counties, Santa Clara County, California, and Dave Krings is a county. Any questions you've got about that or any of the assignments, I'll be happy to respond. North Carolina clients, I think that's probably more of interest to you. Cities and counties. Recently, within the last couple of years, we did Buncombe County. Both Barbara and I worked on that. And to tell Barbara's horn a little bit, we had a set of criteria that we were working against for that, and we used both rifle and shotgun to find folks. The rifle part has got a lot of network involved in that. Barbara did a masterful job of finding people who met exactly what the county board commissioners wanted, and in fact, the person hired was somebody who basically just did. She was competing with a number of highly qualified folks, but she just dazzled them, and I don't know that there was any question after she was interviewed that she would be willing to go to work for them, that she was the person. She's still there. George was the interim. He can talk about that. He can tell you folks that I've either underestimated or over explained that work. But the point I'm making is Barbara. She did that, and couldn't have been more. Some of this work is fairly recent. Orange County Water and Sewer Authority, which should have a capital S, but it doesn't, and I can blame myself for that. Some of it is more recent than other parts of it, other assignments, but we've been involved with North Carolina for many, many years. Results-oriented process, on-site development of the recruitment profile, which I described a little bit. That's based on information we garner by being here. We're here for a number of days, not just talking with you folks, which is key, obviously, because you're the people we need to satisfy, but we want to see and get a flavor of the county. We saw a little bit of it on the way in this morning, and by the way, it's a marvelous place. We were overwhelmed with it and impressed as we drove through the little parts, a few parts we saw. We seek out candidates who meet your qualifications. We do advertise, but as I mentioned before, the key to making this thing successful is finding people who meet your criteria. Some of them may respond to advertising, and that's fine, but we make sure through extensive outreach efforts that we do have people who meet your criteria. We do, and that's through this direct sourcing. We have on-site meetings with you folks at least 3 times. We're here at least 3 times. At the beginning of the process, once the recruitment phase is over and we think we have the sufficient quantity and quality of folks that meet your criteria, we'll want to come and talk to you about that, make sure that you understand that. And at that meeting, we'll want to talk about how to complete the process, what you envision as a interview process, when that might take place, and whether or not, and who might be involved in the process. And we want to discuss all of that with you and come to develop a process that meets your needs. We do on-site meetings with you folks, but we do also on-site meetings with finalist candidates. We meet them before you do. And I will tell you that during the coronavirus, some of those meetings have taken place virtually, and I was very hopeful that we would go back to being able to do it in person. But I read the newspaper every morning too, so I don't know. Our plans would be to do it on-site. And the reason for the value of that is that we see people in their work locations. Nobody knows why we are in town except us, but we're watching how they interact with people that they encounter. Frequently, it's people who work for them or who they work for, citizens, department heads wandering through a county office building with the boss, walking into the public works facility, as an example, unannounced. It's interesting to see how employees respond to their boss. Interesting to see whether they've ever seen that person before. But at any rate, we learn a lot. And what we're looking at, we're interviewing them, but what we're looking at in the back of our mind is what you folks have said your needs are, and we're asking you about how you expect the county manager here to interact with the counterparts that we're watching for or looking at when we're there. So we're trying to assess them in terms of your criteria. We do thorough background checks on all of the candidates. We do them of all of the finalist candidates, and that includes, maybe it's not here, that includes credit, criminal, driving, national and local criminal, civil, sex offender. They do a social security scan. We do references. We go back at least 10 years and at least 3 positions. At least they've had 3 positions in 10 years. We do the site visits. It's a pretty extensive process, and we use professional expertise to accomplish And I probably missed something. Educational verification, any credentials. If they're credential managers, we verify that. If they're got to say they have a PE license, we verify that. So we will help you with the final interviews. As I mentioned, we'll discuss with you what you want, how do you want to handle that, and those interviews, and will provide information, all the information we have about a candidate, and which will include not just cover letters and resumes, but we also have semifinalists complete a very substantial and supplemental questionnaire. It's a narrative document. It's not something we pull off the shelf. It's something we design based on your profile, and we want you to read it for you. It shows you not what they've done, how they might meet, how closely they might meet your criteria. It also shows you how they write and how they communicate. Right? We will help you facilitate. We'll help you through that whole process, and we'll be here during the interviews. Then we'll help you make facilitate an employment agreement. Usually that's with maybe the chairman of the board or somebody designated by the board, and the attorney, and usually it's myself or Barbara. It will facilitate the first establishment of first-year performance goals between you and the person you select, and we'll follow up with the board and the person selected at least twice during the first year to make sure that the transition has gone smoothly. We're committed to your success. We'll keep working for you until your placement is made. We will redo the search for no additional professional fee if the new county administrator is not here for any reason within the first 2 years. We will never recruit employees with the county manager who's placed here. We will recruit anybody from here for at least 2 years. That guarantee that we'll redo the search for no fee if somebody leaves within 2 years. As I mentioned, we've done over 850 of these. We've had to honor that 4 times, and only once because somebody was fired in those first 2 years, and that person was fired because of behavior that the city council was willing to accept, but it was so out of the realm of normal executive management behavior that I went to them and said, "You got to let this guy go, because if he did it once, he's going to do it again." And they talked to me about it for a while, and they thought about it for a while, and then they finally said, "It's time to cut your losses," and we did that. But I don't know that we would have done that if I hadn't gone there and advised them to make that corrective action. Typically, the process takes 90 days from the time you approve the recruitment profile. At that point, we know what you want, and that you know that we know what you want, and you're authorizing us to begin it. It's not 90 days from the day that we first talk to you, but it's 90 days from the time that we get the go-ahead. We're prepared to begin the process within 15 days after entering a contract with you. You know the fees, they're on the proposal. This is basically to remind you what the costs are. That expense fee is a not to exceed, and we don't charge you for more than we spend in order to support this work. And if we don't spend that much, you don't pay it. If it costs us more than that amount to do the work that we've been contracted to do, you don't know about it. And then questions. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin. Any questions anyone has for Mr. Slavin this morning? Okay, go ahead.
So Bob, if we were to vote, say next Monday at our board meeting, you'd be prepared to enter into the contract right away and get going?
Yes, we will. Things are getting busy for us, but we're looking at the next month or so, yes.
What's the job market look like right now for potential candidates? Or is there an abundance? I know a lot of times when somebody leaves one place, that's sort of like a domino effect. People just start moving all around. Is that taking place, or?
It's an awkward time, and I think the reason it's awkward, the primary reason is the coronavirus. People are reluctant to move. We're getting a smaller number. Quality is not diminished, but we're getting a smaller number, and we're having to encourage. The other factor that's affecting this is moving. housing market is great if you want to sell, but it's not so great if you want to buy. So we've been able to successfully place people as recently as two this week. I will tell you that the number of semifinalist candidates is not, number of overall applications is down. I think probably because we embellished the advertising with outreach, the quality, we haven't had a problem with quality, but we have had a significant difference in the number of people. And the other question's a good question. Another comment about it is that we have gone from what was kind of normal for us and normal in the industry of advertising and recruiting with a final filing date. If you're interested, file by a certain date. We're not doing that anymore. We're leaving it open till filled. Talk to you about this, and you need to agree. We work for you, you don't work for us, but you need to agree to this to this strategy. But the reason for that is not because we feel unable to find folks in time. It's because we're in a very competitive environment, and quality people apply early on. We don't want to have them wait 6 weeks to a final filing date and then lose them to somebody else during that time. So we'll want to work with you on that.
If, hypothetically, let's say you came up with 6 candidates,
Yes, sir.
and the board, for whatever reason, didn't like any one of the 6. You start over,
Keep
and
working with you until you're happy, and if it means starting over, fine. But another advantage to leaving it open till filled is we don't have to start over.
right, okay.
We might re-advertise, but we don't have to close out and start over.
Okay.
Ms. McCoy?
I think I heard you say that, your candidates will have site visits here, here across the county.
Yes, and that would usually be just the finalists, Commissioner.
Okay, that's the question I was gonna ask you.
Yeah.
It's gonna be just the finalists?
Just the finalists.
Okay.
Well, nobody's gonna take the job unless they're here, and you're not gonna hire anybody unless you've had the opportunity to see them. But it may be that we'll want to interject some kind of virtual interviews between the board and semifinalist candidates as a preliminary step to you deciding whether you want to bring them to town. That doesn't happen often, but normally at that progress meeting, you select from among maybe 10 folks. We ask you to rank them. We'll focus on the top 5, and if the top 5 all check out, we'll bring them in. But the answer to your question, yes, they'll be here.
Well, they will be given a profile of this county, and what's happening
Yes,
in this county.
they will be given, I don't have a copy of a profile with me, but that profile, that the recruitment profile that I mentioned earlier is extensive.
Okay,
And it talks about the county, it talks about the governance system, it talks about the issues that the county is facing and that you're looking to for the next county manager will inherit as part of what he or she is going to be responsible for. It'll talk about the position and its responsibilities. It will also talk about the criteria that you, the minimum requirements. It'll have talk about compensation. It'll have application process. But and you'll see, so they'll see that. So they're not just applying blindly. And then you'll also see all of the work that we generate on them. Cover letters, resumes, it'd be a summary resume, a matrix that we put together that takes your criteria and their background and runs it across the matrix. It'll have ranking sheets and rating sheets. It'll have this questionnaire that I think is very insightful for you folks when you're evaluating which ones you think are best qualified.
I think that is very important, because if we hire someone through your firm or whatever firm, we want them to come into Harnett County and stay here. We don't want them to come in with false information and then not feel comfortable in coming in with an agenda of their own and being able to fulfill that agenda.
Oh, when they're here, we would, first of all, they're here for lots of reasons. One of them is to get a stronger sense of the community and the county and this as a place to live and to raise a family if they have a family. And And so we would ask that while they're here, maybe they're here for 2 days rather than the 1 day, and that they can give them tours. We can't guarantee, and we don't ask them to guarantee that they'll accept the job if offered without being here first. But we do tell them that they have to be more interested in it than not before we would advise them to bring them down. That part of the expense budget does not include bringing candidates to town. It includes everything else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Slavin this morning?
Think of it.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you both coming and visiting with us this morning and presenting with us. Obviously, we, as I'm sure Mr. Woods probably shared with you, we are in a little bit of a time crunch because his time will be drawing nigh. But I think if the board should decide that a 90-day time frame would work well for us, so we do appreciate that.
I greatly appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you so much. And we wish you well. We hope to see you again. You've got a wonderful, this would be a wonderful, if you will, product for us to sell to. But I think it's going to take some selling because people don't know about it.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you again. Y'all have a good day.
Bye now. Bye.
Okay, before our next firm's appointed time, we have a few other items that I think we were going to discuss this morning. Mr. Wood?
Yeah, I guess the next thing is the 3 departments that we're talking about. Do y'all mind if I take this up?
I'm fine.
I gave y'all a memo at your desk. I didn't get it finished till late yesterday. But I wanted to go over this with you. So we are experiencing serious turnover problems in 3 of our departments. Harnett Area Regional Transportation Service, which is HARTS, Emergency Medical Services, and the Inspections Division of the Development Services Department. I had written y'all on August 4th in response to an email from Commissioner Weatherspoon. HARTS operates with 23 part-time, 13 full-time van drivers. Over the last 5 months, we've lost a number of those. And that coincides with the Biden administration's policy of paying unemployed people $300 per week in addition to the normal state unemployment payments. And some people can make more money on this funding than by working. And this policy is to expire on September 1, but we don't have any guarantee that they won't extend it. In fact, as y'all know, the CDC just extended the rent moratorium for another month. Just last week. So there's no guarantee that this $300 per week thing is going to go away in September like we're hoping it does. And as y'all know, that's created a shortage in potential employees for businesses across the country. And you can ride around Harnett County and see signs for hiring, particularly at fast food restaurants, all day long. So we have the same problem. We are currently down 9 part-time 23 approved positions. So about 1/3 of our workforce is not there. And we're down to 9 full-time out of 13 approved positions. 2 of those are out on FMLA. Our problem is we only pay $10.61 an hour. And as y'all know, even fast food restaurants are paying more than that at this point. So we're recommending that you increase the pay to $13 per hour for part-time and $15 per hour for full-time drivers effective immediately. We surveyed about 4 or 5 jurisdictions around us, and that's about what they're paying. So if we're going to be competitive, that's about what we think we're going to need to pay. All of these vacancies led to cutbacks in service levels to our citizens, and that's what brought it to our attention. Y'all got some complaints about people not being able to be picked up for jobs and things like that. So as I investigated that, this came to light. Obviously, we need to get this operation fully staffed as quickly as possible. It is a critical service, and I just want to point out to you that, this is what's called a demand response system. You know, in a larger city, they just run what's called a fixed route. You know, the bus system just runs the same route over and over and over. With a demand response system, what that is where the citizen calls in, typically 24 hours in advance, and says, I need a ride to dialysis or medical condition or whatever, go to buy groceries, whatever, and they're scheduled. And the reason we do that is so that we can put several people on the same schedule and kind of develop an impromptu route so that we're making the best use of each van. And so we've had to cut back on a lot of those rides because we simply didn't have the drivers. So it has created a major problem. And I just wanted to point out to you, as I say in this sentence, we have a significant number of dialysis patients. And as y'all know, that's critical that they get to those appointments and get their blood cleansed. So we average over 1,200 such transports per month. So it is a big operation and highly critical for those people's health. So the cost to take these positions up is as follows. Full-time positions, $80,865. Full-time position fringe benefits, $10,218. Part-time, $62,985. Part-time position fringe benefits, $9,200. So the total cost of the position reclassifications would be $163,268. Now the good news is this department has $157,000 of the CARES Act funding that's still available from the North Carolina Department of Transportation. So we can draw that money down for this year, and the net impact in the fiscal 22 budget would be $6,268. So I think we've pretty much got that problem resolved. Now we get to the other two sections. Emergency medical services. I refer you here to comments from Larry Smith, and they're about 2 pages back from this memo. If you want to look at that. But Larry has compared us to Johnson County, Wake County, and that's who we principally lose our people to. So what we've ended up becoming is a training ground for those areas. You know, we get somebody in, we get them certified, trained, a little bit of experience, and then they're able to make significant more money elsewhere. So what we're recommending overall is 10% increases across the board, pretty much like we did with the Sheriff's Department. And so I've listed out the positions. That's every position that we get. Now, the other problem is it has another small division, which is our fire marshals. They do the inspections on new buildings. They also have to do some mandatory inspections once or twice a year. Like every school has to be inspected once a year. Okay. And the problem is, once again, we just have tremendous turnover there. So we're basically doing the same thing there with 10% increases. So this is much more significant. The total cost there is $539,000. The last department, it's actually a division, is the inspections department, and there's where we have, I think it's 6 or 7 inspectors who do our building inspections. And when I say buildings, that's actually 5 trades. You've got general construction, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, and then the fire code. And so also what you need to understand there is there are 3 levels of building inspectors. Level 1 is an entry-level position. You can even hire somebody and they get a probationary certificate for up to 2 years. But then they have to take a test and get their certificate. So basically what you've got is there's 5 different trades, and then there are 3 different levels within each trade. Okay. The problem you get into is when people start getting level 2s, and particularly when they become level 3s. And if they have all 5 certifications, they are golden. And they are extremely hard to find. And they're extremely hard to keep when you're in the environment we're in, sandwiched between two MSAs, both of which are growing, because here's the advantage. This is a 600 square mile county. Ideally, what we want is an inspector that has all 5 certifications, because we want to be able to send him out in a particular area. If every one of them can do every job, we can assign them in specific areas. That cuts down on the travel time, which makes us more productive. And it also is helpful to the development community because they're not having to wait around for an inspector, to do the footings, electrical, plumbing, all the different trades. So I wanted to give you all that background to explain why it's difficult to get these people and also difficult to retain them. And our problem is we're not doing a good job of retaining them, and we think the problem, once again, is money. So this one's a little bit different. We have central permitting, which is an excellent program. That actually is a great service to the development community because when they come in, these people are located in developmental services. So when they come in, they can talk about any kind of permit they need. It's zoning. If they're going for subdivisions, the planning people are there. If they need an electrical permit for a rewire, a plumbing permit, anything, or if they need a new house permit, we have permitting technicians that walk them through that process. Okay? But those permitting technicians need to know a lot about each field, each trade, so they know where to direct them and how to direct them, and also how to calculate the fees and all that stuff. So our CP technicians, we're recommending you take the grade 16 to grade 19. Now that's 3 grades, that's 15%. There's 4 of those people. Then we have the code level 1, we think is okay. That's the entry level. We think we're okay with it. Code officer level 2, we want to take up 5%. We're behind on that. Where we're really behind is what I was just talking to you about, grade level 3. And those are the people that are really rare. We think we need to take that up 50%. So that would go from 25 to 28 on the paper. And then the assistant chief code enforcement, 10%, and the chief inspector, 10%. They also do inspections, plus they're overseen by other people. So we estimate that these changes will cost about $80,000. So now we get into funding sources. As mentioned above, Harts will only need $6,268 from the general fund after applying the remaining CARES Act funding. EMS will need $539,000. Inspections will need about $80,000. So that's a total of $625,351 that we need to come up with from the general fund to take care of this problem. And I believe now that the property tax bills have been calculated, we can revise our estimate of current year property taxes. And let me go into that for a little bit. When you do your budget, we don't have the figures on how we've ended the year, obviously, because they make those budget projections for the next year sometime in early May. Because if you remember, you get the budget in about mid-May and then you're voting on it. So there are estimations involved. The good news is that around August is when we start preparing to send out the tax bills. Well, that's the true test because now you get the actual numbers. Because at that point, the tax administrator has nailed down what all of the assessed valuation actually is. And he's had 3 months to do that. So in the fiscal year 2022 budget, like I said, you estimated in May for ad valorem taxes for real property. And that's all property except for motor vehicles. So remember, that's $60,500,000, but remember, there's another over $8 million of property taxes, but that's motor vehicles. We did not include that in here because motor vehicles are taxed by DMV. You remember that gets sent out with your annual registration on your vehicle, and you have to pay the vehicle registration, but you also have to pay your property taxes. Then they remit that money to us. So we really aren't involved in that process except receiving that money for DMV. So I have excluded that from the calculations. And your budget does the same thing. So on your real property, which is real, all the other properties except the motor vehicles, the estimation was $60,500,000. When the tax administrator started preparing the final assessed value figures, not including motor vehicles, the total was $8,391,000,000. If you apply the 75 cent per $100 of assessed value, that generates $62,485,682. So that is what he will be sending out as bills. Now, we have a tax collection rate for the most recent year, which is what we used on the budget, of 99.29%. In other words, you're not going to collect 100% of the taxes in the current year. It generally takes one more year of follow-up and really doing all the enforcement to get that money in. So for the current budget, you have to discount it to that tax rate. When you do that, that gets it down to $42,042. It should be noted that there is $763,144 of taxes that will be due from the Atlantic Coast Natural Gas Pipeline project. The reason I'm mentioning that to you is they had a laydown yard. That project is now over. And so that money will not be a recurring source of revenue. We will get that money this year, but it's one-time money. And so we want to put that in fund balance, and then, ideally you would use that for some one-time purchase in the future. So I've discounted that, even though you're going to get that money in. Then that gets us to the amount projected going forward into future years would be $61,278,890. So here's the critical point. That is $778,890 more than originally budgeted. So it should also be pointed out that you accepted the annual property tax settlement from the tax administrator just last week. On that, it showed that we had collected $61,152,650 for property taxes in tax year 2020. That is almost what I'm projecting, even after taking out the $763,000 pipeline money. So consequently, what that's telling you is you collected that almost as much as I'm projecting last year. And you always have a certain amount of growth in every fiscal year. Because as you know, you're adding houses left and right. And a house is usually finished in 6 to 8 months. And then it comes on the tax rolls. So you will see that tax base grow again next year. You're going to have some growth in your property tax base every single year. So, but even without it, you collected almost what I'm projecting this year and last year. So I feel very confident that we're going to get this money in, is the point I'm trying to make. So, as I noted above, the cost of these is $625,351. So if we're going to take in $778,000 more, and we only need $625,000 to cover these, we do have sufficient money to cover this. So what I'm recommending is that for Monday's meeting, if you're in agreement to make these adjustments, I recommend that you adopt a budget amendment that increases these expenditures by $782,351, and that the revenues to pay for would be $157,000 from the CARES Act, fund most of the HARTS increases, and the balance of it, which is $625,351, we will increase the budget for property taxes dash real in your budget. These raises, in my opinion, should go into effect immediately because of the problems we're having, but also because if you vote on Monday, that just happens to coincide with our monthly work period that we pay for starts on the 16th of every month and ends on the following 15th of every month. So it would be very easy for our folks to calculate because it wouldn't be a split month. It would be all at the same rate of pay for the entire month. Again, I don't want to belabor the point, but EMS, I think Larry Smith has done an outstanding job of explaining why we need to do these things. The turnover we're having, we literally are having to put supervisors on the road covering calls so that we haven't taken ambulances off the road. Bear in mind, every one of our ambulances takes a minimum of one paramedic and one EMT. And so if we lose 2 people, that takes an ambulance out of it. And what that does, as I'm sure you realize, is they're dispersed out. That increases the amount of time that we have to respond to a call. And that can be the difference in somebody having a serious situation, not particularly a stroke or something like that. So I can't emphasize enough, we have got to get that fixed. And that's the biggest component. Mark Locklear, in the back of this also, I did not give you a lot of detail there because Mark did an excellent job of explaining it on the building inspection part. But again, those are critical positions, and I'm sure y'all realize with all the development we have going on, those inspections are required by state law. So we have to do it. Now, if we don't have enough people, what that means is we're going to be delaying our development community in getting those inspections in a timely manner. And so we need to get them, and we need to stabilize that to where we're not constantly turning these people over and they leave for more money to Johnston and Wake counties. And the 2 cities, you got, one of our problems is Fuquay and Holly Springs are actually paying as much as Wake County. And I guess they have to do that because Wake County's stealing their people. So that's kind of where we're at. Good news is we do have the money because we're now able to do a better estimation on the tax collection. I'm confident you'll get the money in. I will tell you that I had Kimberly involved in looking at this. I had Bill Tyson involved looking at this, going over the assessed values. And I had Lisa and also Renee being on the Zoom. So we all went over this in detail. And so that's my report and that's my recommendation to you. And again, if you're in agreement, I would strongly recommend we take care of the problem on Monday so that we don't lose any more people, but also help on the payroll part.
I had a question for you. How many municipalities are we doing inspections for?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure I have the answer.
I'm only aware of this danger.
This danger.
I think that's correct.
What impact does doing their inspections have on this situation we have?
Financially, it's interesting to bring that up. When you read the information from Mark, by state law, you're supposed to set your fees to where it can be self-supporting, but it's not supposed to be where you can have extra money for the general fund. We have so much development going on right now, we are actually generating more fees than it takes to fund our people. So what you're in essence going to do is, where you're adding about $80,000 to your salaries, you're actually generating more than enough money to pay for the department. And that includes Angier, because we get the fees.
Mm-hmm.
So in essence, Lou, it's self-supporting.
Now, we get the inspection fees or we have a set contract
We have a
price?
contract.
That's what I thought.
It's Coates and Andrew that we do, so we just renewed those contracts this year.
Yeah.
And Mr. Wood's correct, that covers that cost of that particular inspection. However, your point is well taken with the explosive amount of growth that Andrew's receiving, how much time that's going to create as far as our inspection.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, if y'all don't want to do that in the future, you can do that. But if you're going to do that, I would strongly advise you to give them a year's notice.
We told them that last year, good point, and they decided to pay what we had asked.
Well, why don't we make it painful? You didn't make it painful enough.
Commissioner McCoy?
I have a question. I know at one point, it was last year, well, it was last year, but we were having inspectors from other counties to come in and work with Harnett County to do the inspection because we didn't have enough people. Is that still happening now?
I don't know the answer to that.
Cody, is that
I do know if we don't address this, we could reach that point.
We have reached that point because I know at one point that they were doing that.
Right. Well, and that's what happens is you have to do the inspections. And so what happens is most places have reciprocal agreements to where, you know, because what'll happen too, sometimes you may have an inspector go out on vacation, or you may have, God forbid, you know, one or two go down on COVID. You know, we'd have to bring in people from other places because we couldn't have it work. But to your point, Lou, that is something y'all could look at. But I just want to stress to you, it's not really costing us money because we can staff up to handle Angier, and we have, provided that we have the positions filled. And they are, in essence, paying you an adequate amount of money to cover those additional people. But that's your call.
So what they're paying us covers the salaries.
So codes, if I may, Mr. Wood, codes, we get all the fees. And then the Angier is a set fee that covers the full cost of what we're doing. We realize the growth, we understand how many we're doing a day, so that's why we put that fee at that level, and they agreed to do that. So codes, whatever their inspection fee is, Harnett County gets.
And I can tell you, they're not going to want to do it wrong because they know how hard it is to get these positions. And the way you're doing it, in my opinion, is a better way. I think the developers, my experience in other counties has been, developers actually prefer to where they're all done by the county. And the reason for that is consistency. If you have city inspectors, they may be easier or tighter than the county. And so an inspector's used to, well, if I do this, I know they'll approve it. Then he runs into another jurisdiction, he does the same thing, and that inspector pops him and says, you can't do that, you gotta do it this way. And so there is a lot to be said for consistency, and that's another reason that argues for centralized permitting. The other thing I think our people also like is nobody else has the centralized permitting like you do. And that also makes it easier for builders, contractors, homeowners. You know, you go one place, you get everything you did. So I guess the question is, do y'all have any questions on any of the information we've given you? Have I laid it out sufficiently for you? Yes, ma'am.
I have questions. Because we have constantly gotten complaints from parks for many, many years. And I don't see anything resolved about Hawks. It bothers me that senior citizens make appointments, and this is way before COVID, and they don't pick those people up. And I see some serious problems coming from that. It is time for us to settle this stuff and try to help the citizens, the seniors of this county. The seniors should not have to be going through this. If the finances is there, Kimberly, for his, to support his report, I make a motion that we should do this. Another thing is that not only the complaints, the morale in that department is awful. Because I, as a commissioner, get calls all the time, constantly, from these citizens, these senior citizens. We are blessed to have this program. I got to say that because I serve on the San Diego board. And there are many counties that don't provide this kind of benefit for their seniors. But if we're gonna provide these benefits for our seniors, it should be there and available for them. No one should have to be standing out, a senior citizen should not have to stand outside in front of their home place, waiting for a pickup, and that pickup never happens. So if there's any way we can resolve this problem, I hope that we will look at it and try to. That's all I got to say about it.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Anyone else? Any questions for Mr. Wood? Okay, thank you. Thank you for that report. We will certainly, I see it's already on the draft agenda for Monday.
Comfortable with going ahead on that Monday? Put it on the agenda?
I think so. I don't see anybody that's opposed to that. Okay. Very good. So, let's see. Next, would be the Mercer Group. So since we're early with that, since our first presentation went a little bit shorter, Mr. Wood, you want to go ahead and discuss your recommendation for reimposing COVID-19 restrictions?
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, could I back up to?
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, you had two more things there. Yes, go ahead.
Just want to give you all an update on the economic development director selection process. We got 14 applications. We asked the chairman of both the Harnett County Properties Commission and also the Economic Development Committee to serve on the selection group. And I've asked Coley to sit in on it because Coley is the interim Economic Development Director and has been involved in it. So the four of us all reviewed them separately, individually. Not surprisingly, we came up with the top three we all agreed on. And there was a fourth that almost everybody agreed with, and I was the odd man out on that one. So I had to go back and revisit why they picked them and I didn't, and they're right. So bottom line is we've got 4 finalists. We are scheduling those for interviews. I believe it's next week. Shannon's in control of that right now. Our plan is to have all 4 of them in either one morning or one afternoon, about 45 minutes with each one. And then hopefully we can make a decision. And of course, I will bring that back to you because unless you have delegated the authority to the manager to make appointments, the appointments are yours to make. And so I'll bring that to you. And we'll bring you all 4 and you can look at it. But we'll have a recommendation on who we think the top person is. And hopefully we can make a decision on that fairly soon. And that way get that person on board. Our goal is to try to get them on as soon as possible because that leads into the next thing I want to talk to you about, and that is we've had staff people, Angie Stewart from Economic Development, Coley, Brian, and myself have all been reviewing Rose and Associates' draft of the plan. And we had a fairly detailed Zoom meeting with her for about 2 hours this past week. She's putting final touches on it now. And we settled on that she would come to your August 31st meeting. That's a work session. And she'll make a presentation to you at that point on her findings. And so I don't think we'll have the Economic Development Director on at that point, but it'll be pretty close. And they may be walking in the door maybe towards the end of September. And then they've got that plan. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is you've got your strategic plan is ongoing with the School of Government. I believe y'all will meet with them for an all-day retreat on the 17th, if I remember correctly. And they have already met with all of our department heads as a group and have gotten their input. I've read the write-up on that, so they'll get a lot of good input there. They're going to meet with you next, and then they'll move forward with their recommendations to you. So the good news is that as we get into November, which is typically when you approve your capital improvements program, All of these pieces of information are coming together. You're gonna have the Rose and Associates plan. Hopefully you'll have your strategic plan done. And that'll kind of guide your discussion about what are your goals, what do you want accomplished. And then of course, from the capital side, that's where you'll put your emphasis in funding all that stuff in the capital improvements program. And as I've told you previously, in addition to the normal capital improvements program money, you're gonna have the $26.4 million in ARP money, and also whatever we can qualify for under the state's ARP money. So the fall is shaping up to be a very critical time for y'all as far as your long-range planning. All of these elements are coming together from a timing standpoint. And I see that as all folding together into the CIP. And that's when you'll make your critical decisions about major things like broadband, how much money we put into water and sewer. Because as y'all know, we've done a preliminary engineering plan is underway for the wastewater treatment plant expansion of 9 million gallons a day. So we'll have all of that information. We may not have a full cost estimate on the sewer yet, but we've already got a pretty good preliminary number there. And so I just wanted to emphasize to you, October, November, y'all are really going to be making some really critical decisions, not the least of which will also be you'll be selecting your next manager. And then hopefully they're coming in the door, I would say probably the 1st of January. December's kind of a dead time for people to be moving and all that, you know. So I'm figuring, and I'm trying to budget my time accordingly to cover into January. And we can do that. I was able to do that in March. So that's kind of it. And that brings up one other thing I had down here. That's a discussion of broadband. I think in response to a question that Lou had, I sent y'all an email out and I sent it to all of you dealing with broadband. We have met with CloudWise, and also I've had time to review your contract with CloudWise. I've also read the broadband inventory of all the assets you already have here by the various companies. And the contract does clearly state that CloudWise will design and construct the assets. Now, one thing you may not be clear on, but Chris Pell and Thomas Royer had already researched before they did that agreement, and I want you to be aware of it. North Carolina is different from a lot of states. In a lot of states, cities and counties can get into the broadband business. In North Carolina, there is a state law that precludes us from doing that. So what you're authorized to do in North Carolina is you can apply for federal grants, because the federal government doesn't give the grants necessarily to private entities to go out and do things with. They give it to the local government, and then the local government does basically what you did, and that is partners with somebody, and you did a detailed request for proposals and selected CloudWise, negotiated with them. And as y'all know, phase 1 is underway. They're designing that now. And you put $2 million of your CARES Act money into that. So that money is there. They're proceeding on phase 1. What I'm going to ask you to do, if you're in agreement, is I would like to add to the agenda that you authorize us to get with CloudWise and have them give us a proposal to design countywide, a system countywide. The reason for that is you've had to phase it up till now, but you're going to have $26.4 million of ARPA money, some of which you can put to broadband. We know that the governor's proposed budget included a lot of money for broadband. We know there's enough talk in the House and Senate broadband is a critical infrastructure that the legislature recognizes. And one of the reasons is that the school systems keep moving towards doing away with textbooks and going to everything's online. Well, if kids don't have broadband, they're at a distinct disadvantage relative to all the other kids. So I think there is a growing consensus within the state government. They need to throw a lot of money at broadband, and ARPA is an ideal time because it doesn't take state money. They're getting billions of dollars. You're getting 26.4 billion. They're getting billions of dollars under ARPA. So we're hopeful that they're going to do that on broadband. And probably we're going to go after water and sewer there, but you've already doing the preliminary engineering on that with the wastewater treatment plant expansion. So what I'm suggesting is we need to do the same thing on broadband, because everything we're hearing is, and what the state has done historically when it gets extra money, is they'll set it up as grants, but they'll probably be competitive. And the thing we need to put us in the best position is, if we have it designed, this is preliminary design, not full design. If you have it preliminarily designed, you know what your components are going to be. He can do what's called a takeoff on the materials and equipment, and then apply a labor factor and their profit, and then come pretty close to, this is about what it's going to take to do the project. So when we apply, we write that grant application, we'll have all of that. We can give them a copy of the plan, preliminary engineering plan, we can give them our cost estimate, and of course that backs up why we're requesting X amount of dollars from them. And then whatever we get from them, the difference we would need to make up with your ARPA money. So that's kind of the plan. So if you're in agreement with all of that, I'd like to get that plan started, because while the state hasn't finished their budget, once they finish it, it's probably going to take them 2-3 months to come up with their grant application process and how they're going to grade them out and everything. We need to be ready for that. So I don't want to lose any more time in getting that. Now, as I said in that memo, I still do want to hire an outside engineering firm, because the issue we have is you have, when you did the initial phase 1 CloudWise, that was a competitive bid, because you were getting bids from anybody else who wanted to do this business, okay? So you got competitive bids there. My concern is going forward, now that you have a 7-year contract with CloudWise, all you do is you negotiate a second, what's called a SOW, S-O-W. That's a schedule of work. It's simply a fancy name for a change order, where we'll give them that, we'll negotiate that change order that says, we want you to do a full design, preliminary design of the whole system. And then there'll be a cost associated with that and a time frame to do it. My concern going forward is, as we deploy this, the problem we have is they're the designer, they're the contractor, and ultimately they will be the owner of the assets. So that puts some inherent conflicts of interest in there, because your designer will want to design as much as he can in there, because he's going to be the ultimate owner. And there's very little cost to him, because you're bringing all this grant money to the table. So what I'm suggesting to you is we hire a second engineering firm to do what's called value engineering. And all they do is they take his plans and his cost estimates, and they review them. And what they're looking for is 2 things. Number one, we want to design it to a performance standard. In other words, how many megs up and how many megs down is the level of service that we want throughout the county. And you've done that on phase 1. And I think it was 25 down and 3 up is what you've done. So if you do that, and if y'all decide to up that standard, that's fine. We just need to know what we're going to do there. Then we would have this guy go back and say, has he done the most economical way to meet that performance standard, number one. In other words, has he over-designed certain areas or not? And so that helps us protect against a conflict of interest there. Then the second thing is, you will not be bidding this out competitively because you've already agreed he'll be doing the construction. What I want from him then is to say, okay, you know what he's building, you know, I want you to do a takeoff on it, and is his cost, the cost estimate he's given us, is that reasonable? Because without that, I think we're just, I won't quite say we're signing a blank check, but we're signing a check without knowing, you know, if we've got any checks and balances in place. So we don't need to hire that engineer yet, because there's nothing to do until they bring the plan in. But I did want to lay that out for you and why I'm recommending that as well. But what I would like you to move forward with Monday, if you're in agreement, is to go ahead and authorize Cloudwise to do the preliminary engineering design for the entire county, minus what they're already doing for phase one. And that way, we cut the amount of time we need to get good numbers, so we're ready when the state comes out with the money. Does anybody have any questions or comments on any of that?
Have any questions?
I guess I know the answer to it, but I want to hear it from your lips. You have laid out a lot of stuff this morning, and a lot of it's costing a lot of money. My question to you, that you have alluded to the fact that we have money that's coming from the CARES Act to help with the EMS and with the HOTS plan and all of that. And I don't see us in a position, that money's not gonna always be there. Because I'm hoping and praying that this virus will leave us at some point, probably be another year or so. But I don't wanna see us in a position, this county in a position and not be able to fund all of these projects that you have laid out here. From that point on.
Okay.
So I think I heard you say that we're going to be financially able to support this.
Yes.
And
All of this will be, the broadband project.
we need the broadband.
Well, our broadband project, I want to put your mind at rest. You're going to have enough money from the ARPA funds to cover the broadband.
Okay.
All right. And that's a capital expense, that's a one-time expense.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So it's a one-time expense.
One-time expense.
That's what I want.
And then the way it's supported is, Cloudwise will have all of these people's retail customers, they will bill them, just like you pay your phone bill.
Right.
And that's how they'll support it. Back to my original comment, I don't know that I finished it, is I did want to stress to you that North Carolina law does not allow us to own or operate the system. And so, at the end of the time, basically what's going to happen is Cloudwise will own the system. Okay. So at the end of 7 years, you may or may not need an agreement with them, because at that point, it's fully deployed, they've got them as retail customers, and they're ready to go with it. So, back to your other question is, it is true that we're using $157,000 CARES Act money to cover this. So in next year's budget, what they'll have to do is use $157,000 more out of the general fund. But bear in mind, each year your sales tax and your property tax grow some each year. So we think we'll be able to cover it there. And you also have to do the same thing with some of the sheriff's salaries. But we think you can cover all of that through some of that growth next year. Beyond that, I think everything else we propose is with money that's in the budget.
I think you answered my question. I heard you, but I wanted to make sure.
Right, it's a good question.
I will put this in a bit.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hankins with the Mercer Group is here now.
Okay.
Ellis, do you have anyone else coming? Are you ready? If y'all give him a few minutes where he can plug in his computer and everything, we can go. Did y'all bring?
Yeah, presentation.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, by way of introduction, Ellis Hankins is with the Mercer Group, Raleigh. They're the other firm that you're interviewing. Ellis has been a long time director of the North Carolina League of Municipalities. He's now an attorney in private practice. He's also the town attorney in Scotland, and has a long record. He's also taught in the UNC School of Government. So he's got a long career in local government before he moved over to the Mercer Group.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. It's good to be with you all. Thank you for inviting me. You all, I believe, have the proposal that I submitted on behalf of our firm in April. That was a while ago. It contains a proposed timeline that was good then, but is outdated now. So I updated that. Chairman,
Sure,
if I
please.
may, hand this to you, and I mentioned this in my comments.
Thank you.
I'm used to asking the judge for permission to approach the bench.
I understand.
Which I haven't done for a while. It is good to be with you. Some brief slides that I hope you can see. All right. So I don't want to talk any more than you want me to, but I want to leave plenty of time for you all to ask any questions that you might have about my background, our firm, and our methodology for these searches and the way we would go about working with you all on your county manager search. But a little bit about our firm. And one other thing has changed since I submitted this proposal in April. Our firm, the Mercer Group, Inc., is one of the largest, probably the largest, public sector consulting firm with offices and folks in about 14 different states. I joined the firm when I retired from my day job at the League of Municipalities almost 8 years ago. And I've been doing some other things since, as George said. Our president and CEO, Jim Mercer, passed away in May, actually, at the age of 84. So there is, because of that, some internal reorganization in our firm while his family administers his estate. The same group of consultants are still working together, but under a different corporate or LLC flag, which also is a Georgia corporation, so that's the only difference. The contract, if you all were to see fit, as I hope you will, to engage our services, will not be with the Mercer Group, Inc. It will be with a firm doing business as Mercer Group Associates, but we haven't missed a beat with any of that. I have been around for a while. I've known George for a long time, but I think both of us still have some laps around the track left. I am a member of a law firm and a consulting firm, and all of my partners in both firms believe in public service and sound local government. I serve as the county attorney for Person County. In fact, I got up early this morning to finish working on a solar farm moratorium ordinance. So if you need one of those, I got one. I still do some teaching and do some volunteer work. I serve as, in a public capacity myself. The Wake County Board of Commissioners saw fit to appoint me as a member of the Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority Board of Directors, and I enjoy that work and that service. We do think our firm has a thorough and deep understanding of municipal and county government operations and what city and county managers do. And we have an extensive network, not only within North Carolina, but across the country among managers, and we know a lot of those good folks. And a few words, you all know that your county, like all the others in North Carolina, works under the council or board manager form of government. It's very prevalent in North Carolina. It works well. It's one of the, I think, great advantages of our state that certainly contributes toward sound local government and strong bond ratings and everything else. So as you know, what your manager does is recommend the budget, then administers that budget through the fiscal year after you approve it, appoints and supervises department directors, and generally directs the operation of the county government under your policies and priorities. Let me say again, this is the Board of Commissioners search. The consultant you engage will be tasked with assisting you all in helping you recruit a group of well-qualified candidates and provide good advice and assistance to you all through the process. We would hope to bring to you for your consideration a diverse group, folks with different sets of strengths and weaknesses, but all well qualified for your consideration, for you to compare and contrast and decide who, in the circumstances, is the best fit to work with the board and serve as your county manager. So the very first step in that process is important. Remember what Yogi Berra used to say, if you don't talk about where you're going, you don't understand where you're going in the first place, you won't know when you get there. So the first thing to do is to sit down and talk and have a focused discussion about what it is you're looking for in terms of background, qualifications, experience, personal characteristics. And I would spend some time talking at the very beginning with each of you individually, then with the board in a public meeting, with your county employees, namely at least the department directors. I think it's very important to give them some meaningful input in the beginning about what they think you ought to be looking for, and particularly functional areas that might need more expertise or focus for the future. And then interested citizens. It works well most times for the board to have a public hearing and allow citizens to make general comments about what they think you ought to be looking for. I don't mean people, I mean names, I mean those things I mentioned, experience, qualifications, personal characteristics. And the one work product of that is something I sent along with our proposal, a recruitment brochure with all of those criteria, a lot of information about Harnett County and your county government and what the county manager does, but a list of bullet points about what you're looking for. And that recruitment brochure serves both as your roadmap to remember what you said you were looking for, and the primary recruitment tool, which we will disseminate broadly, along with a lot of phone calls and very active recruiting to encourage well-qualified folks to consider applying. So the process is obviously to place job ads in a bunch of productive places to get the attention of potential candidates early in September, probably. You all get to talk with me about that timeline and set your key meeting dates on that schedule as you see fit. But then once you approve it, we all need to stick to that timeline so that we can continue through this process and get a manager selected, get the terms of employment settled, and then give him or her time to provide reasonable notice to the current employer, assuming it's an external candidate, and get here and working and engaging in an orderly transition period with George before he gets away. So that's the target. So while we're placing those job ads, we'll send you a draft of that recruitment brochure after I've finished listening to everybody in the process. Get your approval. It'll include nice photographs, and it'll be formatted by our graphic artist and be ready to go. We will keep you informed of progress through the process. Application deadline is likely to be somewhere around October 20th. And during that period, as applications come in, we won't just sit back and wait. We will start, and primarily I will talk with the strongest candidates to figure out who they are and assess things like, one thing I think is probably the most important, personal and professional maturity, their experience. And so I can get a good impression of how they do this work and just how their management style, how they work with other folks and whatever. And then after the application period is over, and I've done all of that due diligence, a lot of Google searches, preliminary background checks, I will prepare materials to send to you all and then meet with you all in a closed session for hour and a half, usually no more than 2 hours, to talk with you about those candidates and to help you all select some reasonable number of candidates to invite for a personal interview. And that's likely, that semifinalist selection meeting is likely to be about early November. And probably you want to select and invite somewhere between 5 and 7 candidates. Nothing magic about that number, but fewer than that. There's always the risk that you're going to lose some of those folks. I just worked with the Edenton Town Council, and they had a good problem. They had a strong field, had a difficult time getting it down to a reasonable number. They selected 8 semifinalists, and we lost 3 of those folks who withdrew because they accepted another position or the spouse decided he or she didn't want to move to the community. So there's always that risk. You can't reasonably do more than about 7 interviews in one day. I've worked with governing bodies who interviewed as many as 11 candidates. I don't recommend that. But if you try to interview more than about 7, then you're into a second day. And that requires a lot of time. In the meantime, after you all select those semifinalists, our firm will complete the formal background investigations and we'll do some preliminary reference checks. I prefer to do that before your interviews so you don't have any surprises. If we discover problems like credit issues, that sort of thing, bearing in mind these folks will be dealing with a lot of public money, then I want to know that, and I want to see if it's fatal or whether there's a good explanation, like the serious illness in the family that led to some slow payment history and that sort of thing. If there are bankruptcies, I want to know why. If there was a DWI when the person was younger and dumber long ago in college, that's one thing. But last month, driving a public vehicle is another thing. So we do those, we complete those before your interviews. And we have uninvited some candidates in the past based on those background investigation reports. One person lied to me once upon a time about a master's degree and got uninvited. Wouldn't expect that at this level, but you never know. In any event, we will send you all in advance of those interviews very concise written information about the candidates and the process. We'll help you select the interview questions so that you can ask questions to those candidates that will get from them information that you need to hear from them to assess their suitability. Probably those interviews would be sometime right after Thanksgiving. One of 2 things is likely to happen as a result of those interviews. You might focus on a candidate who is clearly your consensus choice. and give us instructions to start negotiating terms of employment. And that's part of our contract, to help you do that and work with your county attorney potentially on an employment agreement. But you might get it down to 1 or 2 finalists. You're not sure, and it's certainly reasonable to invite 1 or 2 finalists back for a second interview. Talk some more, get to know them both ways, so they can get to know you too, and the county better before you make your final decision. Sometime probably early December. But then you ought to be ready to go to make a decision, negotiate those terms of employment, and vote in an open meeting as the law requires to appoint the county manager, and then get that person here working with your good interim county manager before he gets away. So, final points from me. I always advise boards, keep an open mind, no preconceived notions, certainly don't focus on any presumptive finalist. If you know of folks you would like to consider, let me or the consultant know. Let us make those contacts and encourage the candidate to apply, and et cetera. Keep a completely open mind. Keep all of the personnel information confidential. North Carolina law requires that, as you know, and in fairness to the candidates, that information needs to remain strictly confidential. And finally, your citizens elected you all to make this decision, not me or anyone else. It is good to give your employees, citizens, input into what you ought to be looking for, as I said at the beginning of the process, but this is the Board of Commissioners' decision. Mr. Chairman, I am happy to answer questions that the board might have about our proposal.
Thank you. Any?
I have a question. Looking at your timeline, how does that fit in with your timeline, George?
It's fine. I was able to stretch out Montgomery County about 8 months. So,
Okay.
you know, I've already cut back to 4 days. Probably maybe late November, I may cut back to 3 days a week. We'll just see how it goes. But by doing that, Lou, I can be here for that.
I just didn't want
No, I'm not
to get in a
gonna
long,
leave
drawn
behind,
out
right?
process and.
I asked George about that when we
Okay.
had the conversation about you coming here, and revised this timeline to make sure that we have plenty of time for you all to engage in an orderly, expeditious, but orderly process, get the person here for a transition.
Alice, I don't recall, and I don't have your proposal, but can you briefly tell us some of your past clients and who you
I'm
worked
happy to do
with?
that. I'm sorry, I thought you had the proposal before you. Our firm does about an average of about 65 city and county manager searches a year across the country, plus some other things. Because of my background, I've assisted 8 state municipal leagues with their executive director searches, plus some public risk pools and other things. But some searches that I have recently had my hands in, for example, includes, right now I mentioned I am in the final stages with the Edenton Town Council of their town manager search. Recently I worked with the High Point City Council on their search. Before that, Indian Trail in Union County, Southern Shores in Dare County,
So you
Manio.
You got Mike McLaurin up there.
Sir?
You got Mike McLaurin up at Indian Trail? How'd you get him to come out of retirement?
He was ready. Mike had been doing, I've known him for a long time. He'd been doing some interim manager assignments.
Yeah.
And he
was
decided
in
that,
Antrim.
since he lives in Charlotte, but he worked in Union County and Waxhaw as the manager before he retired. And he just decided when the Indian Trail position came open, he'd like one more manager job, and it was close by, didn't have to move. And they wanted him and he wanted them, and it worked out well. You never
Good
know.
man.
No preconceived notions going in.
Good man.
Yeah, he is. So I've had my hands in a lot of, one of the first ones I did when I joined the firm was the Cumberland County Manager search, when they appointed their current, still serving county manager, Amy Cannon. So probably I've been involved in 25 or so of these searches over the past several years, sometimes with other members of the firm and as needed, sometimes just by myself.
Thank you.
LSU would be the lead consultant on this.
Yes, I would be the face that you would see who would come meet with you all. I would bring in some other members of our firm to assist with active recruiting calls and bounce names off of and that sort of thing. We have that network and we use it, but I'm the lead consultant and project manager if you select us. Close by. Rob.
Any other questions for Mr. Hankins? Okay, well, hearing nothing else, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us this morning, and we will be discussing this and making a decision quickly so that we can get started before George leaves us. So, we do thank you, and if we come up or think about anything else, we'll get in touch with you.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, I believe the next item on the agenda would be the consideration of interim county manager's recommendation to reimpose COVID-19 restrictions in county facilities. Mr. Wood?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, you have a memo from me. I will tell you, Brian wrote it. Oh, he did a great job. Basically, as y'all know, we've got the Delta variant we're dealing with. And what got us looking at this again is I got a call from Steve Ward, or got an email, and he had 4 customer service reps go down with COVID all at the same time. And so he was asking for permission to go back to, on a temporary basis, just doing all their customer service through the drive-through, which people have gotten used to as we were going through COVID before. So I have approved that. We've been dealing with John Rouse and Larry Smith as far as what their recommendation is. Their recommendation is that we go back to wearing masks inside this building for our employees and also anybody that comes into our buildings, because we do have a lot of frontline people. Hey, John. And so that's basically where we're at. What our main concern is, with the memo that you have, you see there's a trend line there. It has started to go back up in terms of people that are testing positive. What we're particularly focused on is not just that trend line, but hospitalization. And the hospitalizations have gone up. That's becoming a concern. I got an email from Larry yesterday about that the hospitals are starting to get filled up with new COVID patients. So there's that concern. And of course that, we already have the staffing problem at EMS, so we got to get that addressed. So we really can't afford to lose any of our frontline people at this point. And all of our parks and EMS people are all frontline people. Now our health and DSS already continue with the masking issue because so they've been doing it anyway, people coming in there. But that's what we're asking for. What we will do, if you're in agreement, is we will monitor. John sends us a report on a daily basis, and I think y'all get that. One of the things we're going to particularly look at is the trend line on infections, as well as the hospitalizations, and then unfortunately if there's any deaths. So by monitoring all of that, hopefully we can look at it, and when we see that it's significantly trending back down, then we feel like we can come back out of this again. John, is there anything you want to add?
No, other than, I don't know if you've seen today's report, but last week we were at 388 cases. It's going up about 100 new cases a week. Yesterday we came in, I had over 300 that had been faxed in over the weekend. Kind of splits, last week and this week, but this morning we had another 100 that had been faxed in. So, and last time I looked, I had a report, but 90% of them are in unvaccinated. About 3% of what we call breakthrough, these folks that have been vaccinated. And about 7% are folks that are in the process of being vaccinated. They either had one shot, one dose, or they've had their second one, but they've not gone 14 days post. So, and hospitalizations, we're still around 20, 25. That's within a 50-mile radius of us.
What percentage of our residents have been vaccinated, John?
When you look at the 12 and older, we're about 36%. One of the problems with looking at that vaccination rate, when you look at the total population, we're at 30%. But the whole population has never been eligible for the vaccine. That's what we dealt with back in January when we were looking at 65 and over. When you just look at 65 and older, we're up a little bit above 70%. But for 12 and up, we're at 36%.
And do we have any numbers on our county employees as to percentage rate there?
I don't know what.
These numbers, they're based on vaccinations in Harnett County. They don't take into account if somebody got vaccinated in Lee County or Wake County.
No, they're Harnett County residents, they're county. We get credit.
You can't, okay.
We get credit for, no matter where they were vaccinated.
Okay,
We
all
get
right.
credit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Wood or for John this morning, or comments?
I've got a question for
Mr. Johnson?
if we go back to the mandate of wearing masks in county buildings, it's also gonna be the separation of 6 feet.
Yes,
It'll all be like it was before.
yes, we'll do it all.
Yes, Mr. McCoy.
Is it true that there is another virus stirring out there in another country, right?
The thing about viruses, they're constantly mutating. They discover a new variant, they'll discover one every week. The thing about that Lambda virus that's out there, Delta has such a strong hold in this country, it's kind of like centipede grass in June, if you will. You have weeds up until your centipede takes off, and the centipede chokes it out. Right now, Delta's able to choke out that Lambda virus that's trying to get started. But yeah, viruses just constantly are always mutating, and that's how they survive. So, but yeah, they've discovered another.
I have another question. Is it not true that the more citizens we have vaccinated, that we will reach the herd immunity for these viruses?
A couple ways to reach herd immunity, that you get in, people that get infected that have some immunities or by vaccine. But you got to get upwards around 75% of the total population to start seeing some kinds of herd immunity. Ideally, it's 90% plus. Like when we look at measles and those kinds of things, 95% plus. That's where you get your ideal herd immunity.
But if we at 30% here in Harnett County, I mean, that's a lot of vulnerable people here in this county.
We're a long way from herd immunity.
We'll never reach that.
Thank you, Ms. McCoy. Anyone else have any questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Mr. Wood. Thank you, John. Appreciate you being here this morning to share those facts and figures with us. Yes.
Can I call you later?
Yes, please do. Yeah. Okay, the next item on the agenda, I had asked that this be put on. I think I received my answer since then, but basically, as you know, as you may or may not know, the Harnett Regional Water has, or is in the process of running sewer to, I believe, the final two schools we have, Mr. Wood, that were not on our county sewer system, and that would be South Harnett Elementary and Anderson Creek Primary. And I'd asked Mr. Wood about that contract being to get the sewer to the site, but still we had the issue of connecting the school to the sewer, and hoping that we could go ahead and get that contract and/or change order in place to get that done before the company left, and we had to bring them back so that we might be able to realize some cost savings there. Mr. Wood, you want to update us on what you shared with me?
Yeah, what I'm recommending you do is you take the contract that Harnett Regional Water has for the installation of the sewer line and pump stations and all that, and just do a change order to that. Brooks and his people are going to get a cost estimate on that, and then we'll simply do a budget. We'll do a budget amendment to and approve that change order. The difference is that change order needs to be paid for out of the general fund, and the reason is Harnett Water takes their facilities up to the property line, and then the property owner has to put in the connecting piping. Now, the difference here is the Board of Education is the property owner, and under state law, we're responsible for their facilities. So I can't have Harnett Regional Water pay for it, but we can do it out of the general fund, which is where we pay for all the school facilities. So that's my recommendation, and I believe, Brooks, you said it's somewhere around $150,000.
Right, yes. I remember one school was 125 and the other one was, I don't know, 27 or something. So yeah, 157, something.
So if we can nail that down in time for Monday, we can go ahead and have a change order in the budget and ready to go with that.
And I will follow up and see where we are with that. I know some of the school folks were negotiating with them, so I'll try to see where they are with that. Hopefully we can get a firm number. Okay, any questions or comments about that matter?
Well, the good news is, as the chairman said, these are our last two schools not on sewer. And I believe you said, Brooks, that one of those playground areas y'all had to rope off because the septic tank is failing. So
We did,
this
yes.
is a good improvement in that.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Okay, Mr. Wood, County Manager's report.
Okay, well, the first thing we have is the draft agenda that Melissa has put together. Y'all want to go through that? Got a call to order, pledge of allegiance, consideration of deletion from the consent agenda. The only thing we have right there is minutes. So Brooks Pierce, the redistricting consultant, Craig Schauer, has asked to make a presentation to you to kind of kick this thing off. The good news is, I believe, the latest update is we're to get the census numbers on the 16th, which would be Monday. And so this is a good opportunity for him to come in, start that process where we can kind of walk through the process, what the state law is and that sort of thing.
I think the legislature is expecting them on the 12th.
Well, we originally thought it was going to be the 10th or 11th. So I'm hearing the 12th. I talked to representatives from 2 congressional offices yesterday, and they said the 16th. So I guess it's the federal government, we'll see it when we see it. We've got that. And then Harnett County's General Services Director wants you to consider and approve the one-call medical non-emergency transport contract. This, it used to be that we negotiated these things. The state's gone to this one-call vendor, if you will, and And so if we're going to do non-emergency medical transports, we need to have this contract with them because they refer patients to us. And then we schedule the rides. So it's pretty much necessary for us to do business in the non-emergency medical transport. Then the Sheriff's Department is asking to purchase a K-9 for the Tosa Link. And that'll be paid for out of the sheriff's funds, his asset forfeiture funds, not the general fund. And then every year, the Sheriff's Department has a contract with Campbell University to provide law enforcement services. The reason we're needing to do this is, as you know, we took their salaries up 10%. And so the contract needs to be amended to reflect those increases because they pay the 10% of the officers we assign over to Campbell. And then number 11 is what we discussed this morning, a motion regarding the position reclassifications, the Emergency Medical Services, Hearts, and Building Inspections Division. Then hopefully you'll be ready to approve one of these two firms for the county manager executive search firm, so we get going there. And I guess the one thing we didn't put on here that we need to add is this issue about COVID. Oh, I'm sorry, the reason we did not do that is what we were told is if you're in agreement, I can do the part about what employees have to do in the building through a memorandum, and then the chairman can take care of the public having to wear a mask by a memorandum as well. And we'll just use the ones we had before that we put in place. So I guess maybe what we need to do is put it down here to just discuss the COVID restrictions, and then y'all can make a decision if you want us to go forward with those two things.
Sounds good. Let's add that on. Let me, and 8, 9, and 10, is there a reason that they can't be put on the consent agenda? They seem to be,
No, sir. They can be.
any objection to putting 8, 9, and 10 on the consent agenda? Ms. McCoy, are you okay with that?
Is that down in the Hearts and
Right, that's the contract on the one call Medicaid, the sheriff's office request to purchase the K-9 dog, and they're also requesting approval to enter into their contract with Campbell University for the security.
oh, yeah,
Let's do that, Melissa. Let's put those 3 on the consent agenda. Okay, any other thoughts or comments about the proposed draft agenda for?
The only thing I would mention is you'll notice we're recessing until Tuesday, August 17th, so we don't have to advertise that meeting. If that's your all-day retreat, we
Right.
the UNC School of Government on the strategic plan.
Sounds good. Okay.
we're having a meeting on 16.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, we had discussed, and when I gave you an update on broadband, about whether or not you would authorize me to have Cloudwise do the preliminary engineering. Are y'all comfortable putting that on the agenda?
Y'all comfortable with that on the agenda? I think so.
Okay. Anything else?
Yep, thank you, Melissa, for catching that.
I believe that's everything for the agenda then, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and so do you want to mention the applications for boards and committees?
Okay, I think, looks like we've got 3 in yellow. Is that the ones?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we got, Matt would like to be reappointed to the Sand Hills Center Board of Directors. Vice Chairman Witherspoon's term is set to expire September 2021. So Lou, are you coming off and Matt's going to take your place? Is that what we're doing?
Right.
Okay. And then Harnett County Planning Board, Ricky Day would like to be appointed for District 3. And we still have 2 vacancies, District 1 and 3.
For the planning board, District 1, for the planning board,
That's the planning board.
Is that District 2 or District 1? I'm seeing 2 on my.
Ricky Day is for District 3.
3.
me, yeah, I see, for District 1, we have, a vacancy on the Board of Adjustment.
Board of Adjustment, yes, ma'am.
Right. So
1
we
and
need-
3, yep.
We need one for District 1 and District 3 on those.
I think I have one on for District 1.
Okay.
Check into that.
And then the Harnett County Commission for Women and Youth, Melanie Stewart would like to be appointed. Denise Thurman would like to be appointed. Removal of Jacqueline Jones. Okay. And there's 2 vacancies on the board, so Ms. Stewart and Ms. Thurman could fill those slots. And then we have 1 vacancy when Ms. Jones is removed. I don't know that you need to remove her. If she expires on August 31, just, oh, I'm sorry, that's 22.
22, yes, sir.
You need to remove her because she's not attending.
Why are we removing them? Why are we removing
They're
them?
saying that, the notice here, she's not attended scheduled meetings and she cannot be reached.
Oh,
So she's not been coming.
I got you. I know it's Thurman. I may reach out to her. Yeah.
And you have the background on those 2 ladies. So that would be the appointments, Mr. Chairman.
All right. And then I believe you provided us with a schedule of upcoming meetings. So at this time, do we have a need to go into closed session? Seeing Mr. Snow shake his head no.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon. Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. Motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.